if you want some big, unadulterated melodic rock music, but something with a bit more pizzazz and a bit more energy, we've got an album for you today. It's from a band called Green Lung. The album is called This Heathen Land. It is album number 3 from Green Lung, and I think this is a case where they have had, very much more and more eyes on them as they've gone along. We reviewed them for the first time on album 2, Black Harvest, back in 2021, and around there, and since there in particular, in the UK, I feel like there's been people kind of rubbing their hands together going, man, this band are going to be something, and it felt like the side of the UK metal scene that isn't, based around your metalcore stuff and the more mainstream fare usually at the moment. A lot of people were kind of getting ready to crown Green Lung as like the next big band and kind of willing them on to do it. Maybe they weren't actually there yet, but there was definitely people talking about them with that kind of they're going to be massive sort of tone about it. That maybe isn't the most helpful time and sometimes puts bands at a disadvantage, but regardless, they've signed to Nuclear Blast for this one. I heard rumblings about this album of like, they've really gone there, they've knocked it out of the park, they've made their stab at like a big album, and I thought, we'll wait and see, is it hype or have they really done it? I am now a Green Lung fan, certainly, because I thought they were good before. There was obviously something there. But any sort of like dilly-dallying in whatever, I'm definitely in the club now.
This is one of the biggest leaps in quality between albums that we've kind of talked about, I'd say, recently. In terms of albums where we covered the last one and are now covering this, I think this is spectacular. I think the jump up, and it's not even like they've totally changed things, it's just better in every way.
Yeah, I liked I liked Black Harvest quite a lot.
I quite liked it as well. I had problems that I'd kind of got a bit hung up on, but it wasn't negative. But yeah, this is...
I didn't even have problems. It was more that this band are, they're growing and they're going somewhere. But this is the first Green Lung album where I'm like, yeah, that is excellent. That has not just one, but a ton of songs I'm going to remember, far, far from now when we're not reviewing this album or anything. And it's really exciting, I guess, to have this particular review to be not just a band that we like doing good things as per, but a fulfillment of promise this is the kind of thing we get a few times a year maybe. It's the moment where you can really start shouting and go yeah, everyone listen to this.
Full house. I was in the sort of same boat as both of you. I kind of liked Green Lung, but I wouldn't say I loved them. I saw them at Bloodstock a couple of years ago, and I kind of knew then that they had song power, but for whatever reason, they didn't quite break through that barrier from going, wow, this is a nice band, to this is a genuinely great band. And I hadn't heard those rumblings you were talking about. So when I put this record on, and the first 3 or 4 songs just came roaring out the traps, it was like the homecoming queen that I wasn't expecting. It was just like, oh, yes, more Deep Purple, thank you.
Yeah, Green Lung, if you've not been aware of them up to this point, they play a kind of sort of 70s stoner doom, I guess. I know theoretically it would apply, but I don't really like using the stoner term too heavily with them because that makes them sound like Beelzebub or something, which really they got way more in common with kind of flamboyant 70s classic arena rock, you're saying.
Queen meets Sabbath is almost kind of how I like.
Yeah, all of those things, and that's absolutely their skill set, particularly on this album. I think their name makes them sound a bit more like a weed band, but someone pointed out to me that it's probably more like trees and forests being the lungs of the earth, and I was like, oh yeah, that does apply. But they turn all of these kind of fixations on the weird pagan past of the United Kingdom and ultra-specific British kind of reference points. The full title of this is This Heathen Land, A Journey into Occult Albion. There's a prologue track which sounds like kind of 1970s British TV, Quatermass in the Pit kind of shit. The guy they get to do their cover art is Richard Wells, who I have got books and movies and things kind of his art all over them because he's the guy in the UK for we need a poster for A Field in England or something to look kind of folk horror-y. Get him. It always throws me this band are from London, the literal biggest metropolis. You think they have to be from Suffolk or by Stonehenge or something, but they turn those things into bangers that make people want to be in on those things because the songs are so big. Because I the shit they're referencing, right? I love that as well. I'm in on it. That surface level appeal, bands like that I think have a risk of appealing to those people who are only already in on those same interests, and it can limit a band's trajectory as much as it can be kind of a thing to draw people in if the music itself doesn't have that universal appeal. That's what I think they've smashed on this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because again, I'm totally down for all the folk horror kind of dressings that they put all around all of this, but what they've just done this time is they've combined that with undeniable just kind of hit songwriting within the framework of metal songs. This is kind of like cracking the formula of like Ghost, essentially, and blending huge pop melody and like pop sensibilities in the songwriting with like just British stonery, doomy heavy metal, and it is just such a irresistible combination when you wrap it up in all this kind of like witchcraft and folk horror kind of like lyricism and everything like that. And it just is such a fun journey from start to finish to go on. That I was kind of like, okay, cool, what this is. And then the moment that chorus on the Forest Church hit, I was like, that's it. They've cracked it the moment that kind of comes in. And I've not had that chorus leave my head since I first heard this album.
Elliot, you kind of said it. The opening run of like 3-4 songs on this record is genuinely ludicrous.
I think people kind of overlook, when it comes to what bands are going to be popular, people overlook song power for sound. They go like, oh, it sounds like this, so it's going to be popular. This is not a style of music that it is inherently popular now, or you presume to be popular. But you put this on and you just go, this is genuine like arena size Rainbow Blue Oyster Cult throwback. And if there wasn't another band already doing that on the biggest stages possible with the biggest show, it would feel like such an enigma. Because when Prologue, with its kind of dungeon synths and the way it introduces the record with "It's time to explore this heathen land," and then that Sabbath Bloody Sabbath riff comes in, it's just like, who likes heavy metal is not immediately swept up in that? Like, again, a really slamming, like, razor sharp riff, and then going back to the 80% of Awful, that I'm going to say the thing I don't like hearing other people say. That chorus is fucking massive.
It's so fucking undeniable. Like, because the thing is, it's something, because it comes to that verse, which is like, his vocals in that verse could be like, they tread that line though, they could be so annoying because he's so full of characters, there's like all these like keyboards and synths, and I was like, in another world I could not like that, but whenever it comes around to the "and take us down to the Forest Church," I'm like, every time it's fucking just belt it out. Like,
I it's a bit lazy, I think, to compare anything that does like spooky 1970s occult arena rock to Ghost, and because a lot of this album doesn't sound like Ghost.
I only doing that is because I was saying it's that
no, I understand what you're saying.
The pop and the metal kind of perfectly collide.
I completely agree. I just mean in terms of, it sounds like Ghost, whatever. A lot of this album doesn't. The Forest Church does sound like a Ghost song, right? Because the nasal vocal he does sounds particularly sort of papperish there, and I mean this in a positive way, because that chorus, that thing of like, there's a thin, nasally kind of voice, but it gets filled in by all this like jubilant choir and this general sense of reverence, and it makes you want to throw your hands up and cry for absolution, right? That chorus is incredible. The way it lifts up further as it goes along, and you're like, down to the Forest Church! Like, it's so... The riffs and the verses are kind of like, funereal and evil. You might as well be doing fucking like Hubble Bubble Cauldron Bubble on those verses, right? The theatre is all there, but it tops it off with a hook and a melody that is just like at that proper fucking standard. Like, it's a hook that doesn't just fill in the gap of this is where a chorus goes, but it smashes it and it goes there. And then Mountain Throne has this like big fucker, like greasy
riff,
biker rock and roll, like something out of an Orange Goblin song or something riff. But the way the singer lets that main hook fly, from Subterranea, it's like proper control of where you're going to direct the ebb and flow of a song with something like that. And we spoke about that as the lead single. It's even better in the album. There's like at least 2 of the songs of this album I like more than it. It's fucking brilliant. And then
the 2 songs either side of it I like more than Mountain Throne, which is
wild move of in this run. Suddenly, you are hit with Maxine Witch Queen, which, oh my god, you are grooving all over like the Goblin Disco dance floor to that one.
That synth, I was like, oh, let's fucking go.
It made me howl with laughter the first time I heard it, and I love that. I was just overjoyed to hear it, The tone is so fun, but the melody is unforgettable the second you hear it. It's just like, come on, let's go, party time.
It's like Spooky Highway Star. Like, this record has so much Deep Purple on it, and when they really bring it to the fore like that song, it just makes me smile. Like, in this run, I would say that Maxine Witch Queen, in theory, is probably low. I'd probably have it below Mountain Throne and the Forest Church, but I can't physically do that because the organ sounds like John Lord, and that is a sound that just tickles my heart. So, and it just, again, the whole thing, Maxine Witch Queen, just as a title, it's like you're going to like that.
Yeah, they've nailed that ability to really just be like, yeah, that song immediately. I'm going to remember that one, and like I love that they tease you with the chorus on that one because
the two-pronged chorus again.
Yeah, it's the main keyboard line. That in itself is hooky, and at first it feels like the chorus is just going to be cycle that round again and go Maxine over it, and that'll be enough, right? No, and they kind of do that at first, and then it comes around again, Maxine Witch, and it's like holy shit, that is going to go off on that tour they've got coming up. Like that is undeniable single, and there's, like you were saying, Elliot, like this sort of 1970s occult rock thing, like it's not inherently like super like hit factory stuff, but occasionally one of those bands will knock out just a fucking like party song and you go, yeah, that is a hit, that is irresistible. Who, like, what person who hates fun, right, is not going to have fun during that? And they've done it there, and straight off the bat, that's 3 songs all in a row there that are all different feels, that all completely nail what they are, and all have fucking mega like hooks that are, you know, going to completely dominate any live show they do straight out the bat. When they riff, it's not just like, you know, they've done that kind of upbeat stoner biker riff on Mountain Throne. You get the really stately kind of power on something like The Ancient Ways. They obviously have fondness for all of these different sort of corners and bits of what like doom metal and classic rock and all these kind of things are. They've not just gone, oh yeah, Electric Wizard, we'll do that. Like, you know, so many have done over the years. One for Sorrow turns up, and it's like Cathedral have turned up. Like, the guitar tone is so heavy. Like, we're not Kissing the Go-Go anymore. We are, like, in a fucking, like, funeral mass. It is crushing. The production on it is, like, immense.
Like, One for Sorrow has, like, a real sense of, like, grace and class in and amongst how fucking heavy that riff hits. And it's still melodically so strong with how it bursts out from that chorus, where, like, even when they're doing the classic Doom song at this point, after that ludicrous sort of opening trio of like fun songs, it's still so melodically just impeccable that even I'm like, fucking love Doom right now. Like,
yeah, like Maxine Witch Queen and One for Sorrow might be one of the biggest jumps in vibe from song to song consecutively you could find on like something that you could conceivably call like a stoner or doom metal album, you know, in God knows how many years. I didn't think about that fact until this point. That's weird to have those 2 songs next to each other, but they make it work.
It's just that run of like each song in this album. I mean, I think you said about almost the entire album where each song does actually really justify its existence in being its own distinct feeling, its own distinct vibe, and just nailing what they set out to do each time. And it never feels kind of just like, cause it's 8 songs this album, and each one is like totally justified and not feeling like a single filler album track.
Yeah, there's no redundancies on this record. Every single song kind of scratches an itch that this style of music should. And One for Sorrow, I mean, it might be my favourite song on the record, and it's that huge climactic chorus and the Argento synth line towards the end.
Yeah, it goes all like proper phantasm, doesn't it? It's great.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, this record isn't a particularly sinister listen. Like, the horror elements are there, but it's more kind of... I think when they really lean into it, that 6 for the devil himself on that song, it goes hard. And it's, again, like, it's not something that I thought Green Lung had in them. I always thought they were kind of like a doom metal, kind of scrappy do, like loads of energy, lots of them, but not necessarily very dangerous. But they can whip that out the bag at a moment's notice, and it is still fun. And then to go from that song into something like Song of the Stones, which sounds like Pentangle or whatever, and then to pull that off and for it to not feel, you know, like they're trying their hand misguidedly at something completely different. Like, it all works.
There's a sense of kind of witchy glee on this album where I think the singer is really coming into his own. Like, I think the best moment they had prior to this was the song Graveyard Sun from Black Harvest, which was like this kind of like grand occult ballad, and he sold that song really well. Basically every song on this is better than that one. But here, that ability to, without being like an obvious powerhouse Ronnie James Dio type singer or anything, make those things fly, right? But as you say, he injects kind of character and a snarl of conviction into it when it needs to go kind of dark and impish. There's one point, no warning, in Hunters in the Sky, he just does like a Rob Halford circa Painkiller screech. But then the kind of, what you're saying, like the real moments where it leans into like I say, he's fucking lounging over a cauldron or something, and you look at the man and you go, you don't look like that, right? Like, you, like, there's not much about you that really conveys, like, yeah, that is a genuine occult kind of figure, but he's able to turn it on in the voice and the playing, the guitar solos when they're given the spotlight, just as much so. They always like elevate the songs. The one in Ancient Ways is like Brian fucking May.
Oh,
there's
City.
so many Brian May kind of like big rocking like guitar shows, because there is like a real sense of like pomp and camp and theatre to all of this album, but again, it never kind of undermines it. I mean, Song of the Stones, just said that that's the most kind of like around the cauldron, and that's when they're going all in on that folk thing, where that not done right. That's where I always get turned off on these sort of albums, as I kind of argued before. But even when, like I say, I'm so immersed in them at that point that even when the flute gets busted out on Song of the Stones, or whatever it is they're playing, I, like whatever the woodwind stuff is, I'm like, fucking bring it on, because it's all just another really well thought out element, and I'm just so invested by that point, because again, the melodies are so strong, his character and vocal does just make me believe. Like again, you say you don't look at him, he doesn't look it, but because of where he can transform as a vocalist, I'm believing he's, you know, in his little stone circle, druid cloak on and everything. Like, I
mean, Song of the Stones is just so Wicker Man. You're expecting Britt Eklund to start pounding on the wall, going, "Hey yo, who is there?" But like the sequencing on this album has thought put in terms of like, not in an elaborate concept kind of way, but just in the way you look at like a 1970s rock album, and there's a clear side A and a clear side B, and an ebb and flow between tracks that don't just do the same thing. And Paranoid makes sense. Rainbow Rising makes sense. This has that run of songs we spoke about. It's broken up by Song of the Stones in the middle. Oceans of Time is like an immense, like proper album closer. You know, like this yearning, romantic, graceful piece of songwriting. Which the first time I listened to that, I recognised the lyrics straight away, and it's so funny.
I love song, isn't it? Like...
it's so funny that on their Journey into a Cult Albion record, they've done a Dracula song. It's like, yeah, he went to Whitby once. He got a boat. We'll put him in there. But the ending surge with all of that, I know you feel it, Mina, I feel it too. It's fucking fantastic. It feels like it's got the kind of big swing for the fences ambition of those timeless classic rock type records, and the way their big ending moments kind of approach the circumstances, the feels and the tempos. Like we're saying, they flip wonderfully from song to song, and they're good at all of them. There's not any one area where you go, that's an obvious weak patch, you're not so good at the slow stuff or whatever. Like we said, Ancient Ways is kind of more like that kind of mid-paced theatrical doom with guitars that like just roar with that production job guitar tone. Stuff like Hunters in the Sky, more that kind of head-banging feel. Even does like an ooh at the start to bring it in.
That ooh was again one of those times I was like punching the air, like fucking let's headbang.
There's nothing insular about it, is the thing. I think that's one of the big determining factors about what you were saying, Ellie, about what kind of stuff like this feels like it is for, you know, doom heads, and what stuff feels like it is kind of rockstar doom. And that's what this feels like. It's loaded with ridiculous backing vocals, those incredible, like, relishing the limelight solos, enormous keyboards out the wazoo. Like, we get loads of great albums in a year that maybe excel more specifically in a niche, right? Like, if this thing appeals to you, whatever, go for it. We've got some of them coming up at the end of the show. But this is one of the albums this year that feels like you just have to kind of insist that everybody listening checks it out, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, still a small band, right? And they've written an incredible set of bangers that feel like they just have such a great sense of widespread appeal.
This doesn't feel like a small British band putting out this album, because again, production-wise, it sounds immaculate. I can't knock the production. I mean, everything sounds
like money's been thrown at it, you know?
Yeah, but it sounds heavy. Like again, but it doesn't like sacrifice the melody in terms of having the guitars crunch. But it's not, you know, the guitars aren't sanded down, sound wet, so it can have that poppier appeal. It just has every aspect is just so perfectly in tune, and I'm just like, this feels like this should be a big band doing this, and I'm hoping that it does have that crossover where people really start to latch on and get behind Green Lung because of just the quality.
Well, it's because it nails all the stuff that you want a record like this to nail. Because on one hand, it does still have some of that sort of insular Britishness, where like on Hunters in the Sky, the lyric goes, when you hear the horn blow above Crock and Tor, you'll know that you'll never escape from the moor. It's like, how are you even from London? Like, that is the...
It's like from Whitby to Whitechapel, like...
Yeah, you are from Barnsley. Like you formed in 1968. This is not rock star behaviour in the slightest. But then, you know, moments later, Oceans of Time, where I was like, this sounds more like Whitesnake than Warning. Like, it's got kind of Long Way From Home, forlorn love song, kind of still thrusts the air. It's got the drum of like a glam tune, but it's kind of this big, lumbering doom song. And it's kind of got that... It's got a populist quality that most occult rock sort of doom stuff just doesn't have, and maybe, you know, doesn't intend to have. Maybe it's deliberately, you know, alienating. But when you can write songs of this quality, you'd kind of be a fool not to.
Yeah, it's an album where, when you see these choruses live, you are just going to want to throw your hands up in the air in elation and belt along. It is as crowd-pleasing as a 70s-styled occult doom record about obscure British folk horror feasibly could ever be, right? And the vibe is specific, but the songcraft is beyond that. And that, I think, is a really great thing when bands can tap into that. And that's what I think Green Lung have done here. So please do check it out. It's called This Heathen Land.